So, there's a new Cloverfield movie that just kind of came out of nowhere. And I'm going to talk about it.
I have to be quick. Whatever you're doing right now, stop. Go to your children right now. Kiss them. Hold them for as long as you can. That's all there is.
The Cloverfield Paradox. So the Cloverfield Paradox is a movie that I just found out was a thing like yesterday. And I had heard they were working on a Cloverfield 3, and I liked the second one, and the first one's okay. So I was kind of excited to see this, and I didn't know it was a Netflix movie. It just appeared on Netflix one day after the Super Bowl. And so I watched it, and it's not really very good, which is a little disappointing because I kind of like how Cloverfield has kind of over the years established like a universe and like a lore to it. It's got this weird story and lore to it that I find really interesting. And each movie, well, this movie kind of not fucks things up because this movie is actually supposed to answer a bunch of stuff from the previous two movies. But it doesn't really do that, but it kind of does. But it also asks more questions. Like, I still have no idea what the fuck really happened. I will say, I do really love the cast of this film. We have Baron Zemo.
My name is Zemo.
Daniel Bruhl. We have David Oyelowo, however you say his name. And you have the Gold Lady from Guardians 2. I should have looked up her name, but I didn't. She's the Gold Lady from Guardians 2. And they were kind of the main, them three, and then this other lady astronaut. Again, I don't know her name. I was too lazy to look it up, and I don't really feel like looking it up now.
The actress's name is Gugu Mbatha-Raw.
Gugu?
Her name is Gugu.
I love it.
It's great.
Mbatha-Raw.
They were all pretty good. And then the other astronauts in it weren't very good. We have this Asian lady who kind of just yells at people in Asian. We have this bald man who I'm guessing is the medic. They call him Monk because he's bald. And we have the guy from The Martian, the Russian man from The Martian. I guess he's just typecast in being in every space movie from now until forever. He was good in The Martian, but he only had like 2 lines in The Martian. In this, he's in it for at least the first like 10 minutes. And I didn't really like him. I thought he was like a smug, arrogant asshole the whole time. Maybe that was the point, but his acting didn't really it just seemed like he was acting really bad. Also, this movie could have been like a really damn good space film. Because I love sci-fi, I love movies in space. This could have been a really good space film, but it's actually kind of more than a space film because there are segments that kind of take place on Earth, but they're like really brief and quick to the point where it's like, why even have them? And I'm gonna kind of get into spoiler territory here, so if you haven't seen it and you want to see it, stop watching now, or if you just don't give a fuck, continue to watch. Whatever, I don't give a fuck. So this movie takes place in space, but it also takes place on Earth, and we have kind of 2 different stories going on, but they're related. And basically the space crew did some kind of interdimensional travel or whatever. They are the reason why the monsters kind of entered our dimension and our world, because early on there was a news report from some guy who said, you know, oh, if they do this, you know, we might get interdimensional rifts and, you know, demons and water creatures and shit might come out and all this stuff. We don't know what the fuck is gonna happen. And then that's basically what happens. And it's supposed to kind of tie into the first Cloverfield, but it kind of doesn't, and I'll talk about that in a second. But then we have this story on the ground with the main lady astronaut's husband, and nothing really happens with him. He goes to the hospital and he finds this little girl who's still alive after everything's been like smashed and destroyed. She's still alive for some reason. And he like takes her and he goes and hides in a bunker somewhere, which kind of ties into the second one. But that's like it. So it's like we didn't really need to see that. In fact, it would have been cooler if everything was in space, because we wouldn't know what the fuck was happening on Earth. That would be really interesting, and it would kind of bring a layer of mystery to it a little bit. And also, if you keep it entirely in space, we could just be like, oh, the events of Cloverfield are happening on Earth. But like that's like, we can get it, we can piece it together. But instead they constantly are cutting back to the Earth because some reason. This almost kind of felt like two different movies kind of spliced together. Like it feels like, this honestly kind of feels like it should have been two different movies, and I would have been down for that. If we got the Cloverfield Paradox and it was a space movie with all the characters in space and it just stayed in space, and then the next movie was the husband of the lady in space on Earth doing all the Earth shit, that would honestly be kind of cool. You could have two different movies that kind of tie into each other, but you don't have to see both to understand what's going on. They're two independent stories that tie together. That would be fucking dope. But instead they just said fuck it and merged the two together. I also forgot to talk about fucking Chris O'Dowd. That's how memorable he was in this fucking movie. He wasn't good. And I kind of like Chris O'Dowd a little bit in some stuff, but he just was fucking annoying as shit in this movie. He was so like trying to be funny, and it didn't come off funny at all, at least to me. Maybe someone else finds it funny, I don't. And there's also a scene where he loses his arm, and we see like the little nub, and it's just meat and bone, and he just leaves it, like he doesn't patch it up, or he doesn't like, he just leaves it to where it's just like a little nub with meat and bone fucking sticking out. And I'm like, bruh, that shit's gonna get infected. You gonna die. He eventually does die, but not from a weird meat infection on his arm. Also, his fully intact arm comes back later and is like writing and like telling him messages. I'm guessing that's from the parallel dimension that they went through, because they start seeing things kind of bleeding over into their ship from the parallel dimension that they're now in, but it's never really explained very well. It's just kind of like, oh, there's just an arm that can move on its own and can write to us, and like none of this shit was fucking explained. And it kind of becomes like a horror movie in space for a little bit. It's not, I wouldn't categorize it as a horror film, but it kind of has that vibe and it has that tone. And for most of it, it is kind of just a horror space film. Like everyone just starts getting picked off. There's one moment where the gold lady from Guardians literally just becomes a villain just out of nowhere. I mean, like she is a little sketchy when you first meet her, but she just, out of nowhere, she's just evil now, and she's like, I'm just gonna fucking murder everyone. And then she gets blown out of airlock. Daniel Bruhl gets shot in the chest, but he lives somehow, and he's not bleeding to death or in pain by getting shot. So he's invincible, I guess. He's better than Zemo.
My name is Zemo.
But like, I'm so tired of seeing like horror films in space. I'm fucking sick of it. Stop making space horror movies. We just got one last year and it was fucking garbage. I don't need to be reminded of that piece of shit. Alright, I'm not even gonna say its fucking name. It's Life. But I don't wanna fucking talk about Life. And like, this kind of felt like a ripoff of like Event Horizon, Alien, Life, bunch of other space horror movies that I can't think of off the top of my head, but there's too fucking many of them. And it's just really cheap. Like, oh, let's make a horror movie, let's set it in space, because then it could be isolated, and what, like, it's just like a cheap, like, setting, in my opinion. I will say the pacing, this movie does move quick as fuck. It's never really slow or dry or anything. It moves, it has a pace to it. But that's kind of a flaw of the movie as well, because this movie's only like an hour and like 47 minutes. I would have preferred if this movie was maybe like 2.5 hours, and then the first hour, we kind of get to know the crew and get to know these people and why they're here, and you know, we get to kind of, you know, learn about them a little more. But the movie just kind of jumps into it, and the only one we really somewhat know about is the main astronaut woman.
The actress's name is Gugu Mbatha-Raw.
Gugu?
Her name is Gugu.
I love it.
It's great.
Mbatha-Raw.
And even then, all we know is, oh, she has a family that she cares about. That's her whole character, is that, oh, she has a family that she cares about. And okay, cool. Because then once everyone starts getting picked off, I'm like, I don't like any of you. Like, you're all like just dumb assholes. Like, how are you astronauts? You're all fucking stupid. And then like some weird shit starts to happen. Like there's this weird metal, like liquid metal type shit that Chris O'Dowd like shoots on stuff to fix things. It like comes alive and like kills him somehow. It like goes in his mouth, I guess. David Oyelowo just kind of like kills himself, which was a really funny scene, because he locks himself in like a pod or whatever, or part of the ship that they're on, part of the space station that they're on, And he's like, yo, I have to detach this manually. I have to detach this from the rest of the ship or else we're all gonna die. And then literally the lady on the other side is literally like, we can do this manually. And he's like, no, fuck you, I'm gonna kill myself. And he kills himself. I guess he just wanted out of the movie because he was like, this movie sucks. And then like some sketchy shit is going on with Daniel Bruhl, but then he just kind of, we just kind of forget about it. Like there's some really interesting ideas that weren't really kind of touched upon in this film. Like some really dope fucking ideas that kind of gave me flashbacks to like Europa Report and like Moon type shit, but it just didn't go all the way with those elements. It was just kind of like, oh, here's a little snippet of this cool idea. Let's get back to the fucking main story. I do really like how this does fit in with the Cloverfield universe. I do like how it is somewhat a prequel, but at the same time it isn't, because it does kind of fuck with some shit from the first movie. I do like how this franchise, each movie is connected to each other in some way, that the way they're connected still isn't necessarily confirmed or shown really. This movie was marketed as, you know, this is gonna be the key to tying the other movies together, and it kinda is, but it kinda isn't as well. There's still some things that I don't know what the fuck is happening. But it does kind of tie them together. It at least explains how the monsters, you know, just came out of nowhere and started attacking people on Earth. But again, just stick to space. Or like, this is the same problem I had with 10 Cloverfield Lane, where it's like, most of that movie, about 98% of that movie is fucking fantastic until we get to the ending. And this movie has the same goddamn problem. The ending is fucking awful. The ending is so bad, and it had potential. I was like, all right, maybe the movie's shit, but the ending, like, it looks like the ending is gonna be dope, because basically the main astronaut woman and Baron Zemo, they're still alive. They make it out all right. They're back in their own dimension. They basically get in a pod and they're headed down to Earth, and the main astronaut lady's husband is like, he's talking to like Houston or like someone at NASA or something, wherever the fuck, and they're like, yo, they're coming back. Like they're here, they're coming back down to Earth. And he's like screaming at the phone, like, tell them not to come back, tell them not to come back. And it's really fucking intense. And then it cuts to them kind of like entering Earth's atmosphere. Like we see like the clouds, and then they just kind of go into the clouds. But then immediately after that, we just see a giant fucking CGI Cloverfield monster just break through those fucking clouds. And he's just screaming at the camera for like 20 minutes. And it's like, you had a great ending and you fucked it up in like 10 seconds. And it was just so bad. And also the Cloverfield monster, if this is meant to be a prequel, the Cloverfield monster in the original film was not that fucking big. It wasn't big enough to fucking reach the clouds. It was big, it was barely even big enough to like hit a building. So like, are these movies, like, is this meant to be a prequel to the original? Is it meant to tie in with 10 Cloverfield Lane?
How the fuck are these movies connected?
The Cloverfield Paradox, I didn't really like all that much. Apparently on Rotten Tomatoes, I think it has like a 20, maybe 30% on Rotten Tomatoes, which I think is kind of fair. Like there's some good ideas in it. There's some really great ideas in it, but it could have been a lot better than it was. And apparently Cloverfield 4 is already shot and is coming out this October. Like, are we just gonna have like 10 Cloverfield movies in a fucking year? That's insane. I'm gonna go see it, but that's fucking nuts, dude.
Now you wanna get nuts? Come on, let's get nuts.
Hopefully Cloverfield 4 is much better and more cohesive. It's on Netflix, you can go watch it. It's free, I guess, technically on Netflix. Go watch it, it's only like an hour and a half. Like, you're not wasting your time watching it. If you're a huge Cloverfield fan, you might love it. If not, you'll probably just be like, what the fuck is this? But I wouldn't really recommend watching it because it's very, very bizarre.
Stop.
It's my fridge. My fridge making creepy ass sounds.